Next Wednesday triggers 44-day prorogue of Parliament. And I'm not even going to predict what would happen during that period. That's going to be a fascinating time in history. But what I will say is, whatever happens at the end of that 44 days, that is the start, not the finish of this. You know, the metaphor that we've used for all of these talks is it's like the Great North Run. It's like you're a poor runner, like I would be in the Great North Run. You get a very high number, so you start somewhere way back at Cowgate and you walk 3 miles down to the start line before you run your half marathon. We're somewhere between Cowgate and the Tyne Bridge at the minute in terms of this timeline. So we haven't started. We ran through what the further extension would look like. And again, that's just logic. Why would the Commission make their life more difficult when they can just take the off-the-shelf answer of, we know what your annual assessment is each year, so you can have 1-year extensions. We know that there's a transition period built into the negotiations. There's a little bit of uncertainty about, you know, how long it would be, when it would start, when it would finish. But this sort of talk that a trade deal can be done during the transition period is simply that. It's just talk. Not enough time. So I think there'll be a 2-year cooling off transition period. So if you're right about the further extension, it takes you out to 2021, 2022. Transition could take you out to 2024. And the bit that people really don't like, the leave bit, I'm basing that on the assumption of a 10-year period for negotiating a trade deal. And again, that's back to logic. Canada took 7 years, but Canada covered about 5% of what we need to cover. Switzerland 1 took 11 years, Switzerland 2 took 10 years. They're closer, but still not as big as the trade deals we'd have to do. But you can't factor in a discount in terms of alignment. So we're starting from a position of alignment. We don't have to jump through the hoops of making our laws look the same as the EU. But you know, this idea that it'll be magically easy to negotiate fishing rights with the Norwegians and give concessions and then have the French and the Spanish kick off about that. And each time you give one country a concession, the other 26 want a concession on something else. And each time you pull that lever, it goes back full circle. And you know, the phrase, nothing's agreed till everything agreed, applies to trade deals. And it's backwards and forwards. So I think 10 years is realistic. That from the end of the transition period till the trade negotiation is concluded, you're going to have 2 big problems. How do you trade? On what terms? Is it just a rerun of what we're doing? If so, you've got to ask the question, why are we doing it? And what laws? You know, because this idea that we can take back sovereignty was wrong from the start. If you trade internationally, you cannot have total sovereignty. You know, as soon as you import or export goods across that hard border, whether you like it or not, the ECJ will still be the Supreme Court. You can't sort of say, we're going to trade with Europe, but if we fall out, we're coming back to the Supreme Court. It doesn't work like that in international law. And if we start diverging our laws, you'll have a situation where, I don't know, state aid, for example, is it the EU state aid rules that apply because they have extraterritoriality powers, or is it going to be the UK version of state aid laws, or is it the WTO version of state aid laws? And the great legal answer for all of those types of questions is it depends. Put Remain there, as in Lib Dems get their dream, they win the election, and on December the 13th, they revoke Article 50. It doesn't go away. We might, if we're really lucky, keep the same terms that we've got now during that multi-annual assessment, simply out of ease, because there wouldn't be time to change much. But I would suggest strongly, by 2027, when you get into the next multi-annual assessment, the EU will not give us the same terms again. Why would they? You know, at the minute, we have the best trade deal in the world with the EU. We're the only country that gets a rebate, the only country that has veto, opt-ins, opt-outs. There isn't a better deal with the EU than the one we've got at the minute. And we've just caused them minimum of 3.5 years massive disruption.